Welcome to our first webinar on fighting back against this craziness that is the COVID-19 virus that's just doing crazy things to the economy, but we're going to talk about that today. We're not going to wait for that. We got people from all over the world actually jumping in here. We got 150 people or something. So we'll give it maybe just 30 seconds here, and then we'll get rocking. So thanks again. I want to welcome my good friend and my special guest here, Dave Peterson. Dave has been with, can we get him up online there?
Yep, I'm here.
There he is. There we go. Hey, Dave, how's it going, man?
Good, thank you.
Good. Dave is the Vice President, Head of Commercial Banking for Scotiabank for the Prairie Region. We've been commercial banker and in the industry and been through everything for the last 30 or more years. Plus, we're really good friends. So, hey, thanks a lot for coming, Dave. I really do appreciate it. And we've got a whole bunch of clients online, current, past clients, friends of clients, and people are hurting. You know, like this is unprecedented. We've never seen anything like it. I mean, you and I both been through 08, you know, the recession in 08. And I mean, that was different. I mean, this is not something that was induced by some kind of negative impact on the economy. This is this alien creature that came in and pulled everybody's customers away, you know, and pulled away even and their employees and is changing the way business is operating right now. And I have this feeling it's going to have an impact on the way we do business, maybe forever, certainly for a long time. And so it's nuts. It's nuts. Yeah. So
one of the I think very good sayings is, if you've been through one financial crisis, you've been through one financial crisis. Exactly. Meaning that they're all a little different, but this one is the absolute granddaddy of them all. And so I can, from a government perspective, from a banking perspective, and from a company perspective, this is like nothing we've seen before. Yeah. So as has been said, there's no playbook for something like this right now. So I will say everybody's definitely working very hard. There's no question about that. To try and come up with some solutions, and that is ongoing. I mean, between the government, the executives of all the banks, it is around the clock discussion on solutions for businesses and consumers.
So we're going to just we want to help. Like this, the whole purpose of this broadcast, of this webinar, and by the way, we're going to be doing this weekly. We're going to do this every week. I want people to know there's no strings, there's no pitch. We're not asking for anything. We're not trying to sell you or anything. All we want to do is help. That's the whole purpose of this series, and nothing more. And we're committed to doing this right through this crisis. We want to help people get through this. This is the kind of thing we have to get through together. This isn't a one-man thing. And you know, I know we work with entrepreneurs. That's what we do. And entrepreneurs carry a weight normally in their lives, and they don't often want to share that burden with others. They feel it's their duty in a way to carry that weight. I think it's pretty common. I'm sure you see this too. And so I think it's important that we have a chance to put down that weight a little bit and to recognize that we need to talk about these things, that we do need help, that we can kind of open ourselves up a little bit to this kind of stuff. And so this is going to be a place where we can do that. We can share our ideas. We have a bunch of future ideas for how we can even maybe build some kind of community around this, if that's going to be helpful for people, to really get on top of this thing and work together to I call this fighting back. That's what we're doing. We're fighting back against this evil virus that's come in and whacked us over the head. But we can do it. You know, we totally can do it. So, our objectives today, if I just maybe are pretty clear. We're going to have ongoing objectives as we go through this series, but the first one is really financial stability. I'm going to have a lot of questions for Dave. I know that's something that you're going to be able to help us with a lot, but financial stability is just number one. There's a lot of things we can talk about: where to go, how to shift, how to pivot, how to take advantage of opportunities maybe as things go forward. But we need to make sure we are stable. That's 100%. Next, then we'll talk about planning this attack, and leadership is going to be so critical. And it's not just leadership by business owners, although that's obviously important. It's getting leadership driving down your organization so that all of your people become leaders. And the fundamentals of business are not broken. And we need to understand they're so important, and they're still important. In fact, maybe more important than ever. And then we're going to touch on some of the financial resources available. I know we've got people from around the world that are watching. We'll talk a little bit about Canada there, but most of the governments around the world are providing similar things. So we'll just kind of touch on that. And then finally, an action plan. We're going to talk about a to-do list. What's your to-do list for the week? What do you need to get done? Make sure you've got done this week before we come back to talk next time. So that is our plan. Without further ado, let's chat about money. So, what are some of the things you're seeing out there, Dave? What are some of the real challenges you're running into? And
Mark, it's absolutely is and probably the most used word these days is unprecedented, but it really is, and it's the magnitude of the drop off in revenue and how quickly it occurred. It's in across so many sectors. That's really is something we've never seen before. So, firstly, for all the business owners out there, this is a different situation. And again, as Mark said, I'm here and I'm not speaking on behalf of Scotiabank. I'm just speaking as a banker to share some insight. So as bankers, and I know most I've spoken to, this is a different view of things, because it's not a question of our businesses, have they done anything wrong? We know it's not the business has done anything wrong. This is an outside force that's hit everybody with surprising speed. But what that means is that now, we always say in banking, cash is king, but it's never been truer than it is right now. Working capital is the lifeblood for every business.
You run out of cash, when you run out of cash, you've got no business, right? It's just that simple.
It really is, and this is every business, whether from the largest to the smallest. So,
and just so you know, we've got Wardell clients span businesses with just a few million in annual sales to businesses with hundreds of million in annual sales. So you're really, so the audience listening to right now is probably pretty broad, but I think the ones that really need some of this information are some of the smaller companies that maybe don't have the sophistication, maybe they haven't been cash planning, maybe they don't even have the retained earnings in their company to last more than a few months, which is something that we need to talk about as well. We should talk about now and how to deal with now, but also, what are we going to learn from this? What are people going to learn from this so they don't get in this position if this happens in the future? Because it's inevitable that things like this are going to come down again in the future at some point, right? We don't want to believe it, but it's going to happen.
Right. No, and I agree. There will be a lot of takeaways from this for sure for all of us. But I think right now it's imperative, whether you have a CFO or whether you're managing the finances yourself as the owner.
Yeah.
You have to have a clear view of what cash flow looks like. And I would recommend a weekly cash flow out for the next minimum 8 weeks. And nobody knows the duration of this, but I think it's going to probably be longer than anticipated. So that's why
sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm saying that's why a minimum of 8 weeks is to see where you're going to be. And the things I'll add to that is this isn't a theoretical exercise. Yeah. This is a very, very real exercise. So that means, contacting your customers, understanding what your receivables look like, what is the due date on your receivable now in this world doesn't mean it's going to be when you're going to be collecting that receivable. Talk to your suppliers.
One of the tips that we get, it's just, it doesn't work all the time, but a little, I don't call it a trick, but a little tip I can give to people is when you're sending out an invoice, don't just put, net 30 days, put the actual date on the invoice, because a lot of times it rolls through the company, the manager signs off on it, goes to accounts payable, and then the accounts payable person sees it, And, oh, the manager signed on the due date, so you end up getting people paying a little more on time. Another thing I think to be careful of is holding on and not, like, I mean, you touched on this idea that you talk to your suppliers, right? And I think talking to your suppliers and talking to your customers is this whole communication piece is super important right now, because I remember back in 2008, what started to happen was receivables would stretch and payables would stretch, and because people hold on to their cash, I'll pay a little bit later on 45 days, 60 days, they start stretching it out. Everybody starts doing that, and then you got this loop happening, and all of a sudden cash flow just stops. The economy starts shutting down. So communication, like talk to people. They're in the same boat as you, right? You have to remember, like, everybody in the same boat. So I keep hammering this point that you're not alone. We're all in this. So if we talk, we have a much better chance of getting through this successfully than if we just try to stay in our own little world and strategize and navigate within ourselves. And then you said, talk to your banker, talk to your accountant, talk to your advisor, like, talk.
Absolutely. And that's why I say from putting a cash flow together, it's got, the important part of it is it's the best you can put together to understand what your actual cash is going to be. So you can only do that by understanding, one, when you're going to collect your receivables, and two, when you absolutely have to pay the payables that you have outstanding. And to your point, Mark, there is a trickle down effect. We know it. We're hearing it right now, and that's and everybody's kind of holding back, which is pushing everything back a little bit right now. So I think that's really critical. Operating, look at your operating expenses, but I think that cash flow piece is understanding it is so important right now. And then looking at the resources you have available to make up any deficits in that cash flow whenever you see them occurring. And maybe hopefully they're not occurring in week 1 or week 2, but by the time you get to week 3 or 4 and you're running into deficits, what facilities do you have available? What resources do you have available to meet that deficit?
And we're telling people, whatever, like, you said maybe 8 weeks, but we're telling people, hey, plan for 6 months, plan for a year. Like honestly, we don't know what this is going to do, and it's always better to be paranoid and to plan for the worst. I don't want the worst, but plan for, hope for the best, but absolutely plan for the worst. I think, and then in order to build a plan around that, I'm also saying to people, when you create this plan, make an assumption that your business if you have nowhere else to go, make an assumption that you're going to drop by half, which I know sounds crazy, but lots of people are in that situation already, and some worse. So make the assumption that you're going to drop by at least 50% of your sales, at least, and then create a plan. What does that look like? For sure, cash flow. What does that look like in terms of people? What does that look like in terms of resources? How would you market a company of that size? What kind of facility would you need? Like, just imagine that your company is half the size and create a plan for what kind of business would function that way. And then obviously we can talk about changes and things going forward. And that requires some tough love, I guess, that you're going to have to look at your chart of accounts, get it printed off, and just go through it line by line by line and take a look at it and say, what in terms of the order of priority, if I would, what would I drop first? What would I drop second? What could I renegotiate? And people will renegotiate. People will talk to you, because remember, we're all in the same. Everybody knows this. So go, and little bits add up. A few bucks here, a few bucks there, a few bucks here. Just keep going through and finding ways to cut, and save. Yeah.
So all super good points. And I think that once you've gone through that exercise and you have a cash flow that you feel, as comfortable as you can feel about, given the circumstances, then you start the discussion with your banker at that point, and you go, and it doesn't matter what that cash flow, how dire it looks. That's the important one to talk to your banker about. What
information should they bring to their banker if they're going to be prepared to have a good, solid conversation with their banker, remembering that there's various levels of financial sophistication in business owners. What do they need to be prepared to have a successful outcome with their bank?
Well, I think right now it's really coming with that, and when I keep on saying about the cash flow, but it's really going to be the big the big difference around how long and what you do need as to keep your business going. And it can be a super thumbnail. Like I think, the bankers tend to, always the more the better in information. But right now, everybody understands resources are stretched. You don't have the team probably all together. So the best thumbnail cash flow you can put together is really, really important. What we do know is that whatever the forecasts that have previously been provided are off the table, right? Like those are no longer. Those are no longer. It's a complete reset for this time. Like I'm not saying forever ever, but for this time, it's a reset that you need to go in with what your needs are. And to your point, Mark, I say 8-week cash flow, but I'm pretty certain it's going to be longer than that to go out. So once you've done that, and you can go in with that, show what expenses you're managing, clearly explain what resources you have available to you, because I mean, all this it's going to be collectively everybody coming together on this to shore it up. So on that note, I just want to talk about a couple of things in relation to what has come out from the government, right? So sorry, this is just Canada, specific to Canada, but
go for it.
So under
do you want to talk about that now, or do you want to talk about that I mean, we can just go for it. We can. Yeah,
because I think it ties into what your discussion with your banker is, because under that business credit availability program, and many of the Canadian customers you have seen that, it's $10 billion that the government has said they've put forward to help business. Right now, the conduit to that $10 billion is through the two government organizations, BDC and EDC, right? So the view is that in conjunction with your current financial institution you're dealing with, you will go in, talk to your bank. Your bank will look at what they can do for you under the best case scenario you and your banker can put together. And then if additional shore up is needed, that's when the banker and you turn to EDC and BDC. And then they've got a couple of programs, each one setting up a little differently their programs, and I'll just quickly describe it. So BDC, they'll go directly lending to you, and they have a program which is a working capital loan. And again, I'm not speaking on behalf of BDC or EDC, but just so everybody's aware, they have a working capital program that they're providing a direct loan to the business. EDC works through more of a guarantee program that they'll guarantee financing from the institution you deal with to help support your business. And again, it can be, working capital related. They have a lot of other help too. This is a little more focused on exporters, but that covers quite a bit of ground actually when you talk about exporters. That's the critical piece. But here's the next thing this is why I say you've got to do it now, because everything is super busy right now. Like BDC, I'm hearing, and they're working feverishly and to process applications, but it's not going to happen in a week, right? So what I'm saying is, if you see you've got a deficit coming even in 8 weeks or 7 weeks, you've got to meet with your banker now and start that process in play to make sure you can figure out what can be provided from those combined, because it's going to be, as we all know right now, 7 weeks will be here before we know it. We've got a huge funnel coming in that's trying to process this stuff. So
basically, don't wait.
Don't wait.
Don't wait at all. Sooner than better. And there's I think people should also think this is obviously the most important thing, and the most important source of cash really, and the best source of cash really is through your bank, or ultimately through BDC or EDC here and that sort of thing. But there are some ways to find cash inside your business too that you need to explore, right? You may have some assets in that business that are not necessary right now, not needed. Sometimes manufacturers have equipment they don't use on a regular basis. It may be harder to sell right now, but you may be able to get some money. You may be able to do kind of a lease back. There's different tools you could use. Potentially, there's some assets inside your business that are much more valuable to you in terms of cash flow right now than they are as a hard asset sitting there providing no particular value to you right now. So, dig in around, find those things, right?
Right. But I do agree with you too. We're going to be entering it'll be a difficult period for asset liquidation for sure, right? Because there'll be
totally the way it is. There is a question. Maybe I'll answer right now, and then we can keep rolling. Aaron Richmond has asked. I'm a consultant, small business consultant. I just completed a project for a client. I've tried to communicate with no success. Feel uncomfortable sending an invoice before chatting. How long should I wait? That's a pretty, that's not uncommon. That sort of thing right now, right? That's that kind of stuff. And so we're a consulting firm too, Aaron, of course, right? So you got to communicate like right now. Like pick up the phone. This is the kind of stuff that we got to be on the phone. You got to talk to people. Everybody's in the same boat. They're uncomfortable. You're uncomfortable. Make the call. Just make the call, and talk about it. And they will be relieved actually that you opened the door and had the conversation. Because the reason that they're not paying it right now, if they're not paying it right now, is because they've got issues and they're probably embarrassed or all kinds of stuff, right? That happens. You just gotta blast through that. Pick up the phone, talk to a person, human to human. One thing I've observed, which I think is an amazing phenomenon right now. You and I were chatting about this the other day, Dave. Is there is a cultural shift, an odd cultural shift that seems to be happening right now, in spite of the fact that we're all, sitting by ourselves in our offices and stuff like that. There's this, and that shift is one of togetherness, of a need to get together to help. Like people are like the food bank and stuff. They're receiving more donations than normal. For example, people are pouring out their, dare I say, love to try to care for each other. And so you're going to break through that with your client by opening up the conversation, talking to them about this, and maybe they're going to ask you, maybe can you postpone something? Can I pay part now, part later, whatever? But at least you get the conversation going. But it's amazing to me what's happening culturally. And I'm actually if there's a good thing out of this, I'm kind of hopeful that we're gonna ride that. I don't know how long it'll last, but I'm hopeful that as we come out of this, that kind of positive environment is gonna persevere. I guess we'll see. The Olympics in Vancouver made me feel that way, and I hope it's the same.
But just to, and I would say what Aaron is facing is kind of what we're seeing right now, and that's companies' first priority until they decide what the right size is for their business in the near term is meeting payroll. I mean, that's as basic as it gets, right? So,
prioritizing stuff, right?
Exactly. So companies are making sure that they have the ability to meet payroll, and even if they're downsizing, they needed to meet that one before they started to downsize, and we totally understand that, right? So I think anything that can be postponed apart from that for most businesses is kind of being postponed, right?
For sure, yeah. So but if you talk to them, you're at least going to break through and find out what's happening, and relationships help when it comes to who gets paid first sometimes too. Right? So actually with that, technology works every once in a while. With that, let's talk a little bit about leadership. Unless I didn't mean to cut you off, if there's anything else more that you want to say right now, Dave, before I move on, but
no, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm good.
As I said earlier at the beginning, we need leaders now, I think more than we ever needed leaders. And leadership is something that it's really just about going somewhere, and people who want to go there with you will support you and go there with you. And so you as a business owner need to be a leader, but you also need to teach your people, to be leaders, because there's going to be a lot of fear, a lot of concern, a lot of chaos, that's going to come from this. And so finding a way to move through that is just so critical. There's a human part to all of this, right? There's a financial part, and there's a human part. And people that know Wardell know we spend a lot of time talking about, in the early days with clients, things like mission and vision and values, that kind of these core fundamental stuff, why a business exists, what its purpose is, what your goals are, what your values are, honesty, integrity, hard work, this kind of stuff. And when we get whacked over the head by something like this virus, it's easy to think that stuff is off the side, doesn't matter anymore, but it does. In fact, it matters more now than ever, because if you have a solid mission for your company, when I say a mission, I mean a cause or a purpose, something that people actually care about. Like our mission at Wardell is to help people achieve their entrepreneurial dreams. Well, that matters. It's always mattered to us, but almost matters even more when we know that people are hurting right now. It really drives us. And knowing that businesses are, every one of you, at some point, some are doing better than others because of, depending on what's happening in different industries, but especially those that are struggling, which is a lot of us, you're going through some hard times, right? And what makes you go through hard times to the other side rather than eventually giving up is purpose. So visit and revisit your mission, think about it, talk about it to your people, so that people are bought in and willing to do what it takes to get through this. Because if things are too hard and you're not personally motivated, then guess what? You give up, right? That's what happens. And we don't need people to give up right now. We're fighting back. That's the name of this thing. We're pushing through. So I think it's important to think about and talk about. And then the other piece, and there's a lot of things to talk about here, but just for the short time we have today, the second piece is just communication and how we make sure we're doing that. And some of you do this, some of you don't. There's a couple of key pieces that if you don't have it in your business right now, yet you need to have in your business. And one of them is daily huddles. People need more, not less communication right now. What are you doing? Especially, by the way, you've got people remote. Most of us are working from home, or very spread out in offices if they are, but most of you are working from home. So how do you communicate? How do you get people on the same page? Daily huddle, get onto a video conference, Zoom or something. Zoom's one of those companies that's probably doing pretty well right now. And get the team together. What are we doing today? Who's doing what? Let's go get them. Stay positive and give people a good kickoff to their day. The second thing you want to do is your weekly one-to-ones. You got to, every manager should have a one-to-one every week with whoever is reporting to them. And we're going to, at the end of this, we're going to give you some tools that you're going to have that you can, we'll email you. And one of them will be a weekly one-to-one agenda. So I'm happy to give that to you. But have those things, because not only is it a chance to talk to people about what they're trying to accomplish and what they're trying to achieve, because remember, most of them are remote, so we've got to make this happen. But also, it's a chance for them to have a private conversation with you about what's going on in their mind. Because remember, people are nervous, people are scared. But what's going on in their personal lives? You can have a chance to even say, "How are things at home? How are you doing? Are you all well?" And that little human touch, it goes a long way to building loyalty in a company, especially when times are tough. Maybe salaries are having to be cut, things like that. That stuff goes a long way. It's super important. And I don't know if you have any comments on that, Dave. I know you guys do a lot of this stuff with your teams. I know you do. So
we absolutely do, and I'll say, I work for a corporation of 85,000 people employed in it, and I don't think I've ever felt more close-knit as an organization than we do right now. The communication is absolutely extraordinary. And to your point, Mark, we're living it as a large corporation where everybody is dispersed. The communication is very, very good, and I think much it's very needed. I've never, I'm not I don't like to hold meetings for meeting's sake. I've never wanted to do that, but I've never had more buy-in for having frequent meetings, and we do have meetings that are daily, once every 2 days, weekly. I mean, we have the schedule out right now. That's it's pretty full.
I mean, I think to your point, they don't have to be long. Like I'm not, these are not like, you can do a 10-minute daily huddle, a 5-minute daily huddle if you want. I mean, it's just a matter of touching base. What are our goals? And your one-to-ones can be 20 minutes. They can be half an hour. They don't have to be long. It just matters that they happen and that they happen regularly on schedule. And a lot of times owners are busy. Oh, I don't, I'm going to do something else. We chatted last week. There's not much to say. Let's just skip it. Don't do that. Put them in stone, absolutely chisel them in stone and make them happen no matter what, because you're letting people know that they're valuable to you when you commit that time to them. And if you haven't done one-to-ones or even these daily huddles on a regular basis in your company, you will find them just slightly awkward at first, just so you know, just a little different at first because you're not used to it. But I promise you from experience that if you continue to do these on a regular basis, they become quite natural and they're incredibly valuable for teams. So just kind of go for it, and we'll share some tools with you to help make that easier in an email at the end of this. So last thing I want to talk about there is managing with objectives and utilizing KPIs. So again, this should happen all the time, but especially in a remote situation where people are not in front of you, you're not there directing their activities. And maybe that's a good thing because a lot of us entrepreneurs tend to over micromanage, right? You know who you are. But this environment will help force, I think, people to become more independent. But how do you manage progress? How do you make sure that people are on track and doing the things they need to do? Or flip it around, how do people know they're doing the things that need to be done, right? And so clear objectives and clear KPIs are the way to run through that. And objectives just meaning, just briefly to explain how this works. Take your organizational chart, put your objectives at the top. Probably number one is cash flow, right, Dave?
That's for sure right now.
And number 2 and 3 and 4, maybe they're all cash flow, right? And then cascade those objectives down the org chart. So if that's what if that's our goal, maybe our other goal is to find some new markets or something. We'll talk about that in a second, and then roll down to what do the departments have to achieve in order to achieve that goal, and what do individuals have to achieve. And you kind of have connected objectives through the company, so people know what they're supposed to accomplish. And then we can figure out KPIs, which just stands for key performance indicators, or really it's just the metrics, right? The way we're measuring our progress. We can put measurements in place to keep people on track, and you'll find people really like that. It gives them a sense of accomplishment and autonomy, and it gives you as a business owner some confidence into what's happening. Just before I go to the next slide, one more quick question. I think this maybe is a good one for you, Dave. So this is Tom Wong. Hey, Tom. I know Tom. How you doing, Tom? He says he's a client that wanted to change bankers for a while. That's an interesting one. He said they just came out of special credit and didn't like the way they were treated. Giving this new world order, is that wise or unwise? And maybe that depends whether they're going to or coming from Scotiabank. I'm just kidding. But do you have any advice on that? Wonder.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a difficult time to change banks right at this moment, right? It really is. And Tom, I understand what you're saying for sure, but it is a difficult period, and I would say most banks are really focusing on their existing clients, as making sure that they're providing the service to them that they need to have. And you can well imagine the touch points for existing clients is as high as it's ever been right now. So I think that's a big part of the focus. So I understand what Tom's saying, but I would say until the dust is settled on this, it would be very challenging and probably a low probability of changing banks.
Yeah, good, thanks. So the next sort of leadership piece I want to talk about just briefly, and this is really kind of an order of priority stuff, right? Because we're talking about cash flow, and that's really our first objective for you, is to get you stable. Like, you've got to be financially stable, or the rest of this stuff doesn't matter. But bring your people together. We talk about communication. We're sort of solving that problem. But now the next step is sort of bringing people together sort of for the what next. Like how are we going to push through this? We know that this is very likely to be affecting business for 6 months, 8, 10, maybe a year, maybe more. I don't know. So hope not. So, but what are you going to do about it? What we can either curl up in a ball and hide, or we can face it and try to move proactively forward. People tend to be reactive in crisis situations. You need to be proactive. Whatever that means. A decision is better than no decision, often even if it's the wrong decision. So move, because then you're acting and moving forward, and you can course correct, right? Which is the main reason. So get your people together and talk about next steps. And there's kind of, in order of priority, there's kind of three things that we can talk about. The first one is to do with your current customers. And it kind of flows nicely because David was just talking about how they're focused so hard on customer service and lots of touch points. And I think that is the right move, and I think it's really important. Focus on customer service. It is so important right now that you provide value to your existing customers. Your existing customers, even if you've lost some, your existing customers are your lifeblood. Make sure they love you. Help them in every possible way. Work with them, support them, focus like crazy, and provide customer service. If your customer service is here, make it here. All right. I mean, we talk about benchmarking a lot in our industry. How do we compare one industry to another industry? I would say mirror the very best of the hospitality industry in terms of quality of customer service. If the Ritz-Carlton would do it a certain way, so should you. Like at that kind of, be different, but at that kind of level. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Dave. But I just think that getting close to your customers and hanging on to them is just it's so important. So.
Well, and I think in a time of crisis like this, is the communication has to increase, right? Like, so I've said that, even just in a normal time, when a customer's having a challenge, that's when both the customer and the banker need to double down on communication, right? It's not, let's avoid the conversation. It's absolutely get into it. So right now it's doubling down on the majority of our clients, because it really is, most are facing some level of challenge. The degree varies, but that communication is critical.
The next piece, which is in order of priority, kind of again down the list, but a next piece really is can you make some changes with your business that will help you to capture some business that you're currently not capturing? Can you start to shift in some way? And especially if this thing goes for a long time, you're definitely going to need to figure out how you can pivot a little bit. For example, we've got we're restaurant clients that are currently trying to shift and start doing delivery, for example. I mean, that's happening everywhere. That's a tough one because so many restaurants are out and they're all trying to get into that game right now. But that's an example. So are there ways that you can shift or pivot? I know that if you're a retailer trying to go online, you haven't gone online. Maybe a lot of retailers haven't in the past, or they have a website and you can buy a few things. They don't really have much of a strong online presence. Well, we'll focus on that. I noticed, and I have no investment in them, so I'll just say it. But I did notice that Shopify, which provides online, merchant services or online shopping channels. I think they've got a 90-day now free trial. They're going to extend it to make it possible for small businesses. So stuff like that. Get your team together and just brainstorm and think about ideas. I don't know if you have any clients that you've noticed that have made any pivots that have talked to you, Dave, at all. But what different direction might you possibly take your business to capture some new markets?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say I haven't seen a lot of that directly, but certainly what we do see is the businesses where they have multiple channels or various products, and where one product is particularly finding an opportunity in this market. I mean, it's kind of drop everything and just focus on the one that's producing revenue for you right now. Absolutely. So we do have a few. Yeah.
And maybe in terms of focusing, there's another thing I like to do with some of our clients, which is this quarter we call it a sort of a sales secret formula or something, or but trying to get everybody, like if sales are number one for a business, then everybody needs to be in sales, and we hear that a lot in general, but I think it's even more important now. Get your team together and have this discussion and say, how is it possible that every person in this room could be in sales? Now, obviously, not everybody is going to have the skill set to pick up a phone and try to make a pitch or and so forth. But they can provide value towards the sales department in some way, right? Maybe they can be the one that ships the package or fills out the order form or prepares the quote instead of the salesperson or something. So really explore ideas how everybody in the entire organization can play some role in sales. And then that allows the people that are actually making the calls, or especially if it's an outbound, they're actually focused on sales, to do more. You'll free up some of their time. They can do more and you can increase the volume of sales calls that you're making. So that's super important. Getting people together, how can we all get involved in sales? And so, so first I talked about current customers, then sort of current opportunities, and then possibly new opportunities, again, further down the line, but there may be new opportunities down the road for you. Like, for example, there are industries, we were chatting about this again, I remember you and I the other day, there are industries that are less affected or possibly unaffected by this virus. Can you serve those industries? Is there something that you're doing that can provide value to those industries that are actually moving forward? Technology industries are, in general, or a lot of them are doing fairly well right now. Can you serve the technology industry in some way? Insurance industry is doing fairly well, right now, pretty steady as you go. So think about, I don't know if you can think of anything else, Dave, but what industry? Get your group together and ask, what industries might we possibly serve that we're currently not serving? Before, maybe you paid no attention to them because they were kind of on the edge. Well, they suddenly become very, very important to you right now. So,
definitely one that comes to mind is the transportation sector. I mean, they, especially the ones who have contracts with larger delivery, everything from Walmart to they contract out to some of the other courier services. They're very, very busy right now, right? So and we have clients that service those customers, and they're busy right now.
Yeah.
So that's and again, that's a small portion, but you're right, Mark. There are sectors that are.
Sure. I mean, just crazy, wacky idea. Like I don't know, you're a restaurant. You're trying to grow your delivery. Well, maybe call specifically businesses that are in your area, that are in industries that you think are doing fairly well, and offer to provide, catered lunches or deliver food, or, there's just get out of the box, think a little differently and open your mind, because there are opportunities. And it's the contrarians that eventually in the end come out and win in these things. I mean, I know, I loved what you said at the beginning. You've been through one recession. But I would say that definitely in 2008, taking that angle did allow a lot of our clients to pivot a little and to come out quite successfully out the back end of that recession. And I know this is different, but there's still some aspects of that I think we can learn and try to bring to bear.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you touched on some of the financial resources at the beginning. Maybe we'll just briefly touch on some of them now, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no expert on all the government programs, and so I would strongly recommend that every business owner go to the websites that are available. I know you've put a CFIB, which has got a lot of resources on it, which is good. Go to Canada.ca as well to look at what they have to offer. I mean, I'm not going to comment on whether these are the necessary program or enough. But what I will say is that we do know there's a lot more discussion going on, right? This is not done. This is not the complete list.
Yeah, exactly.
And there will, I feel pretty confident there will be more to come. And I know that, like I said, I'm not involved, but I know that a lot of the top senior executive of the banks are talking with the government very, very extensively. So they're getting a lot of input on what we're seeing on the front line, and hopefully that'll translate into additional services that will come down the pipe. But I would definitely strongly encourage every business owner to go and explore every option available to them, because it's not going to be any one thing here. I think it's going to be a cumulative effect of every resource that you can pull together to help your business and shore up your working capital needs. You know, a lot are going to have to pull from everything available right now.
Well, we'll try to get some, you know, when we send out an email to everybody after the show, we'll try to get a number of these, whatever we can. We'll get some resources. Maybe we can chat after, Dave, as well, and see if we can get whatever resources we can get out to you in an email. Some websites to go to, some resources you can try to keep an eye on. We'll get that out in the email at the end of this. I want to, before we wrap up here, I got another question here from this is from Ed DeRoche. I know Ed as well. Hey, Ed. He said there is a possibility that the best case for a business is to close and cut losses. Many will not survive the timeline. How do they plan for a permanent closure without a personal financial crisis? That's an awesome question. And by the way, I mean, we're projecting right now a good 30% of small businesses are going to shut their doors, and that might be conservative. I don't know, which is why I'm so compelled to do webinars like this to see if we can't make that a better situation. Do you have any? I mean, that might be a question for an accountant, but do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Ed. I really do, because as really as tough as that is to say, I'm not going to disagree with that. And so it's a very real and pertinent question. I'm just not the guy to answer that, because I'm more about financing ongoing businesses. So it's you're right, Mark. I think an accountant or who specializes in insolvency would be the one who could answer that question.
Yeah, so we can certainly I can provide some maybe Ed, if he reaches out straight to Wardell or straight to me, then we can give some recommendations of people to chat to if you know somebody in that particular situation. But and we're, I'm not sure whether it's the next one or the one after that, but we'll definitely be talking to some senior accountants in some of our webinars coming up as well. So we'll be able to address some of those issues next week or the week after. Alrighty, so let's talk about our action plan. What you got to get done between now and next week, best you can. So your first goal, your first order of business, and I know Dave is going to support me on this, is financial stability. Get your cash flow under control. Whatever it takes to get your cash flow under control, do it. Prepare a plan, prepare a cash flow projection, minimum 8 weeks, as Dave says, maybe more, maybe 6, as far as you can, but definitely prepare. Yeah. So cash flow projection as far out as you possibly can. And then the worst case scenario for the unforeseeable future. Create that plan and obviously implement as necessary. Second thing, anything you want to add to that, Dave, or are we good?
No, and again, I'll just emphasize, Mark, that it's really it's not a theoretical exercise. This is really on the knowledge you can pull together from talking to your customers and your suppliers to fully understand what that actual is going to be. Because that's the critical. I mean, it's all about real cash in and cash you have to put out.
It's a great point, and maybe to reiterate what we said at the beginning, then, because sometimes business owners, because I know what business owners are like, often they're optimistic bunch, which is In fact, most of the time, business owners are pretty optimistic folks. And the reason they are is because they wouldn't start a business if they weren't. That's just the personality of a person that steps off a cliff and says, I can do it, let's go, right? But this is a situation where you need to try to hold back a little bit of that natural hope and optimism that you have, and be conservative. This is not, you're not trying to show the banker how great you're doing. Again, this is a real open, bare the chest kind of conversation that you have to have with the bank to say, this is my real situation. And you're not going to get, like, I think sometimes, and maybe you can just speak to this for 2 seconds, Dave, because I think sometimes, business owners have this experience, or maybe not an experience, it could be a feeling or a perception of what their relationship with their bank is, or might be, or should be. And they sometimes don't think of their bank as the partner that it really is for them. They might think of the bank as a little bit the other side of a table, right? And so they want to show their best foot forward so they can have, rather than being fully honest. And I think one needs to recognize that it's not, I don't think that's ever been true, but I think it's a perception. And now for sure we have to tear down that perception. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Well,
you said it at the beginning. We're all in this together, and there's the bank. I can tell you from every bank and every banker I know and have spoken to, the objective is the same. We want every business to survive that can survive, because there's no benefit. There's zero benefit to anybody to have businesses fail. So now, as Ed's point is a very valid one. I mean, there will be some challenges in that, but at the end, like, we are all in it together, and I can. Our closed door conversations are solely focused on what we can do. So it's you're right. I hope people view their bankers as their partners, but if they don't, now is a time to actually believe that we're all rowing in the same direction on this one.
No, it's great. And then start your day. If you're not doing them, start your daily huddles. Start your one-to-ones. They're easy to start. They just take some discipline. They won't take a lot of time if you make them short. And I promise you that they will produce value, tremendous value, actually, for you in terms of bringing your people together and helping you to get where you're trying to go. So start those things, and we'll send you some resources to help with that, which I mentioned at the bottom. So I should also say, I didn't say this up front, but maybe it's obvious, we're recording this video. So we'll make the recording of this video available, of course, as well. So with that, I mean, we've done questions right along the way, but are there any, if there's any more questions, we're glad to answer them. Otherwise, we're kind of, we can wind ourselves up, really. The next webinar is going to be next week, April 2nd, next Thursday. And we'll continue on with this path, like I said, until this is over. If it's 8 weeks, if it's 6 months, whatever, I'm committed 100% to delivering support, help, value, with no strings attached, simply to help people to get back on track, because I know that together we can put this economy back together. I know we can, but it's going to take working together. So listen, thank you very much for watching. Dave, hey, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I know everybody appreciates it. Super great. And I will see you soon, but not too soon, I guess.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Thanks. Take care, everybody. Stay safe out there. Bye-bye.